Well, hello everyone, and good to see you all. Anyway, I've got no rush tonight because there's no turbo talk on, so I can take it nice and slow, and we can go into it in some detail. There's two parts to this talk. The first part will be an introduction, just in case some people need it. I know people like a bit of biographical detail, so let me begin by saying I used to work as a teacher, teaching English and drama and media studies in a variety of misinformation academies across the East Midlands, shall we say. And this occurred to me the other day about how I got into this and the whole sort of free man thing and the whole law game and taking on the bank over the mortgage. And I was thinking, I've always kind of gone along with stuff, if it's resonated with me, right, even if I haven't quite understood it, I've always thought, well, yeah, that's what my heart's telling me to do, so I'll just go along with it. And often, that's landed me in one or two interesting situations. But generally speaking, it's always been the right approach. So at 16, when I had to decide what A-levels I was going to do, it was suddenly like, you've got to narrow it down. You've got three subjects to choose, and I chose English literature, economics, and history. And it occurred to me the other day, actually, that form of me at 16 had actually made a good choice, because really, over the last 5 years now, since I took my change, since I left the state system, those are three areas of my research that have really come to the fore. And recently, over the last 2 years, I should perhaps acknowledge the work of a guy called Jan Irvin, runs gnosticmedia.com, a guy called Richard Grove on tragedy and hope, and one or two others who've brought to the fore this information about the Trivium. The Trivium is a classical learning tool. It forms part of what were known as the 7 liberal arts. Anyone with what was actually, in education means educare. The word educare means to bring out. It means to bring out or to uncover that which has been hidden. So occulted knowledge is knowledge that has been hidden from us. The Trivium is a way of actually applying that which many of us call common sense, but if you look around, seemingly is not actually that bloody common in people. But nevertheless, I think you'll find, as I'm going through, if you've not heard of this before, I think you'll find it all comes very naturally to you as someone, because most of the time, to get here tonight, you probably had to apply some critical thinking. You're thinking, well, what's it all about? Where's it going to be? What can I expect from it? And why should I go? And that in itself is you applying your natural intelligence. Okay, but if you can combine that natural intelligence with your intuition, then that makes you very powerful. Because no one, and I mean this, you can see through. Well, we're going to come on later to one aspect of the Trivium, which is fallacies, and the fallacies that are used against us by people who are trying to usually squeeze money out of us or put us in a disadvantageous position. They're trying to get something over on you. Tonight's talk is going to be, we're going to delve into the Trivium. We're going to look at some examples of fallacy. We're going to look at how, the examples I use tonight are from my own experience, okay? I'm not here to offer any kind of theory. This is a practical session we're doing here. The first part will be the Trivium. The second part will be the application of the Trivium, the critical thinking skills to what I regard as one of the biggest issues that everyone in this country is having to deal with right now, and that's mortgage fraud. Because even if you're renting a place, chances are you're still paying a landlord who's servicing a buy-for-let mortgage for a bank, effectively. Isn't that right, Neil? Yeah. You're an agent for the bank. So we're going to look into that, and so anyway, just to go back to that, I'm still on my introduction here. Time's not of the essence tonight. Loz is a strict taskmaster, but I can be a little bit relaxed about it. I taught in a variety of schools, and I ended up being. I taught for 11 years, and I became it was 9 years, and I was head of media studies, and then I became head of English once this woman had retired. So I was head of English at this school in Leicester. And I did it for 2 years, and I decided that in 1999, that was it. One of the things about it was actually at that time, I was earning good cash. I was earning like 30 odd grand a year, and I was able to save up about 10 grand, and I thought, right, I'll get that 10 grand together, then I'm fucking off. And I decided to go to India. That was 1999, and the rest has been, when I came back 16 months later, things were never quite the same again. And I had to go back into the system to get some money in order to pay this fucking fraudulent mortgage that I had. But after 1999, when I came back, it was different, you see. I didn't really go back into it full time. I was just doing supply work. I took on one contract for a year, but that proved to be too much, actually. That was, and a lot of these schools, you know, they're, when I say the brainwashing institutions, there is some good work goes on in them, but I'm afraid most of the time, like Loz mentioned earlier about the name game, if you go into schools, right, they're doing registration. Sometimes every bloody lesson, but certainly at least twice a day. The teacher's there, reading out the register. Who are you? Getting to answer to this name. They're brainwashing you into accepting that you are that name. You see, so it begins at a really early age. And I decided that I had to get out, so I finished my last job and I got out after. So I reckon I worked for about 21 years as an English, German and media studies teacher. But it was an interesting job to do, actually. And it's one of the things I do miss. Like tonight, it's not often I get to address an audience of what we might call adults, at least on the surface, you're adults. But you know, so I'm used to addressing youngsters, and I do actually kind of miss it. But I'm not. So this is part of it's a delight to be here because it gives me an opportunity to go through this, and I've got one eye on actually setting this up as a program for youngsters, because I think, you know, we owe it to the youngsters to actually, we've got this stuff, this information it's key to what's going on, because I'm afraid if you're not being taught about the financial system and the legal system in today's world, well, there's two key facts that you're missing. That's the whole Russell Brand thing, because Russell Brand's not dealing with that shit, you know. David Icke isn't dealing with that stuff. David Icke is saying the people's voice. The first thing he's doing, apparently, is applying for a license, a broadcasting license. Now, anyone who knows anything about licenses, the fact is, if you get a license, you don't need one anyway, because a license is permission for you to do that which would otherwise be illegal. But one of the things about it is it brings you into the jurisdiction of the Crown. So David Icke, by taking out a license for the people's voice, is immediately susceptible for all kinds of charges, of levies, of taxation. And you think, well, what's the point in that? Why is he doing that? What's he offering in terms of, you know, alternatives to the current financial system? Very little, I would say. And I think, you know, there's a lot of Pied Pipers around right now. That's another thing. I remember as a kid, I used to like the fairy stories, and we're all pretty familiar with fairy stories. But I've come to realise that actually they were there. The people used to tell these fairy stories because we're actually, and I'll be touching on this later when we look at the rhetoric aspect of I've got a pointer here of the Trivium. But there was a great oral tradition. I think there still is. But that rhetorical aspect, I think, has been taken away from the people through various means. But you know, there's been largely a dumbing down of the population, which has occurred over the last 100 years. So effectively in schools now, what is being taught is you're taught what to think instead of how to think. Whereas 100 years ago, many of our ancestors would have gone to school up and they'd have left at 12, 13. Okay? You'd have paid a penny a week to go to one of these poor schools if your parents could afford it. And when you were there, because the teacher was in the classroom with like, you know, there could be 60 kids there, all of different ages, from 5 right through to 13. So the older ones used to teach the younger ones. And of course, one of the things, one of the gauges that we can use to assess how well we've understood something is how well we can explain it or teach it to other people. Okay, so tonight is a bit of a test for me. I'm going to try and get this across to you, it's partly for selfish reasons, because I want to know how well I've understood it, you know. So you're the audience for that, and I appreciate that, and any feedback is welcome, you know, providing it comes within the parameters of the Trivium. I don't want any facetious comments. They're not welcome. You know, we're taking it deep tonight, but at the same time, I'm hoping it's going to be entertaining. I'm working on the premise that if I'm enjoying myself, then there'll be other people in the room who enjoy myself, and that's fine. We can enjoy ourselves together. All right. I'm going to go on for about an hour then, so just keep an eye on the time. I think that's enough of an introduction. Since 9, I've also gone down the free man route, and I'm one of the founding trustees of the Universal Community Trust. And one of the things, we've been pretty low key, but we've been doing quite a lot of stuff, and I know Loz is low key as well. There's a lot of people out there who've been all too willing to put information out there without having tested it, and they're putting out theory, and there's a lot of backbiting going on, and there's a lot of disinformation artists out there, bullshitters. Whether or not they're being paid by one of the alphabet agencies, I couldn't say. Well, I could, but I'm not going to say it because this was being recorded, isn't it? So let me just check the top one's the. All right, got my pointer here. That's good. And, right. Okay, so this is an introduction to the Trivium. Okay, now the Trivium. You think of the word triple. You've heard of Trivial Pursuits. Tricycle. You can work out what it means. It's just 3. Trivium is the 3 ways, and as you can see from this, it's pretty straightforward. With the core point of it all being is a way of discerning the truth, and one of the things that is, I don't know about you, but if you can apply right now, there's a lot of bullshit out there. You have to have your bullshit detector switched on. You have to filter it. It's a bit like making a pot of coffee. You know what I mean? If you haven't got a filter and you pour it out, you got all the grits and stuff, and who wants that? It's no use to you, is it? So there are 3 aspects to it, and it's a natural progression. This is actually how the human mind works, and what I want to emphasize tonight is that this isn't, like I said before, this isn't all theory, this is practice as well. So I'm hoping, even though we've got God knows how much radiation being emitted above us right now, you'll feel some kind of chemical reaction going on in your brain tonight as we delve into the Trivium. So Trivium means 3 ways. First aspect is grammar. Grammar, for the purposes of this talk, simply means the data. It's the information that's coming in, right? This is the who, what, where, when, and which of the issue. We then move on to the second. Oh, sorry, hold on, let me go back. The second aspect is logic, which is the reasoning aspect, where you're sifting through the information and you're asking how. The third aspect is the rhetoric, which is how you express that which you've learned, how you put the information together, and you actually, this is the why of the matter. Why is it like this? Okay? Well, we'll look at some examples as we go along. Okay, I want to begin with Plato's allegory of the cave, which fits in that. If a picture's worth 1,000 words, then have a look at that, and I can be quiet for a bit. This is. Has anyone seen this before? Okay. As I explain this, you'll get it easily. In Plato's allegory of the cave, he asked his audience to imagine a situation in which you've got a cave, and you've got captives who are strapped to these chairs, and they're facing a wall. Behind them is a fire burning, and whoever their captors are is employing these actors to come in and cast these weird shapes that are being cast from the flames. So you've got the shadow play taking place on the wall in front of them. Sound like anywhere you might have been? I mean, you look at that, you think, well, it could be the theatre, or it could be the cinema, or it could be any situation really. You can bring this. The beauty of this is that, like a lot of the fables that we were taught, a lot of the fairy stories we heard when we were younger, they resonate because of the truth. They've got certain archetypes in there. They've got certain eternal truths, and good art is dealing with the truth. And so, what happens in this allegory that Plato came up with is that one of the prisoners actually escapes and makes his way out the labyrinth of caves, and suddenly, you know, for the purposes of the story, he's never been outside before. Suddenly out there under the sky, with the bird song and everything there, and he's absolutely blown away by it. And his first reaction is to go back in there and tell all the others about it. And their reaction is very violent towards him. They kill him. Very simple allegory, but you all get it. I don't even need to explain it, you know. But I think, you know, we can all see what's going on in terms of right now. There's a lot of that at play. The question, of course, is who is it that's controlling? Who is it that's putting out the? Because effectively, you're controlling the minds. This is mind control. You're controlling the minds of the prisoners by the means that you see there, and it's all shadow play. When I was putting this together last week, I was thinking about. I watched a Sherlock Holmes thing on YouTube, and I was thinking, actually, yeah, there are certain clues in there that help us to understand the trivium. In the Sherlock Holmes stories, which I always used to like, Sherlock Holmes, you know, is basically he applies his power of reasoning to work out who it is that's committed the crime, or to solve the mystery. You know, and he's well known for his powers of observation. So he's bringing it. That's the grammar aspect. Sherlock Holmes he's observing. You know, someone turns up. He's saying, "Well, you've come on foot this evening, and you got the train because he sees the stub of a ticket. He sees the mud on the shoes. You know, that's the grammar. That's the information he's taking in. The next part, the logic part, is where the deduction comes in. And this is a quote from Sherlock Holmes. Simply stated, deduction is reasoning in backwards. And as you'll see this evening, when I get onto the mortgage fraud, I've taken the whole thing backwards, right, to the very beginning, to what it was that makes the mortgage, every single mortgage, fraudulent. But this is how he explains it. In solving a problem of this sort, the grand thing is to be able to reason backwards. That is a very useful accomplishment and a very easy one, but people do not practice it much. In the everyday affairs of life, it's more useful to reason forwards, and so the other comes to be neglected. There are 50 who can reason synthetically for one who can reason analytically. Let me see if I can make it clearer. Most people, if you describe a train of events to them, will tell you what the result would be. They can put those events together in their minds and argue from them that something will come to pass. There are people, however, who, if you told them a result, would be able to evolve from their own inner consciousness what the steps were which led up to that result. This power is what I mean when I talk of reasoning backwards or analytically. There you go. Now, image number 1. Magnifying glass, the pipe. The pipe represents, for me, I think Sherlock Holmes has the pipe, probably stashed with high-grade marijuana. To give it to achieve those, it was open. To achieve those deeper levels of consciousness, he's contemplating, he's mulling over the information, he's reasoning it through. He's got his thinking hat on, and if he needs to look closely, there's the magnifying glass, you know. And this is it, you know. He's talking here about the grammar aspect. Data, 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 he cried impatiently. I can't make bricks without clay. So grammar is data, the flow of information is the who, what, where, and when of the matter. And I'm afraid if you're taking shit data in, it's going to be shit data out. You know, and that picture, of course, reminds me of the last school I was working in, which was pretty much like a prison camp. They put a bit like you with them glasses. Yeah, listen, I'm not going to be heckled at this stage. Lars, mark his card, won't you? You know what I mean? I'm far too busy to deal with hecklers right now. But I would advise you, if you do fancy a heckle, you better be pretty good, because otherwise I have got a bit of a tongue on me. I'm going to spare you. But please, no more heckling. I wasn't actually working in that role. It's a very cruel analogy for you to say I'm like that, feeding the kids, pumping it out like a sausage meat factory, you know. Right, now, we're going to, as I said before, if a picture's worth 1,000 words, a symbol is worth 1,000 pictures. And Loz was talking, a lot of this, it boils down to who is controlling us, who are the agents of control. So if we take that there, which, I mean, it seems incredible when you go down to London and you see these effigies everywhere around the city of London. The square mile, the state within the state. You think, well, what's all that about? But we might, just because we don't understand it consciously, there's part of us that does understand it, and if I go back to the fairy stories, they were cautionary tales. They were telling you about psychopaths in your community. The children had to know that there were psychopaths in their community who were dangerous to them. So, you think about sort of like Hansel and Gretel. Interesting. Think about the Pied Piper, and then think about Russell Brand. Jack and the Beanstalk. Jack and the Beanstalk, what does the giant represent? Society, the tyranny of oppression. So the oppression that we're under, a lot of it does stem from the City of London. And we're in a state of war now. And joking aside, we need to know what the tools are that are being used against. We need to know what the weapons are that are being used against us. And one of the mind control is what it's about. Government actually means mind control. Gubernare, the Latin, means control or direction, and ment is from mentalist, from the mental, from the mind. Government means mind control. That's it. We don't need to debate it. We just need to go back to the etymology of the words, and a lot of the time, that's where the answers lie. So, if you think about the Sherlock Holmes analogy, what we're doing here, and what Carmel Butler's done, who was the lady who was here the other week talking about mortgages, is a forensic analysis, a forensic investigation. On the sort of level that the police couldn't even begin to get their heads around, So we're going to just have a quick look at this. Look at the motto underneath there: Domine dirige nos. In the City of London. We've also got the dragons, the symbol of the Red Cross, which is interesting in itself. This is working on a number of things. You've got the combination of the imagery of the metaphorical creatures or metaphysical creatures. We've got the sword there. We've got the symbol. I mean, this has got so many connotations when you look into the history of flags and particularly the St. George's Cross. But hey, I haven't got time to go into that right now. Or maybe I have. But that phrase there, domine, we've got a combination there of emblem and words. So it's designed, it's not just there by accident on the wall. They're not just playing around with it. It's there for a reason. And, it's magic. What they're doing is casting spells. So let's look at what it means. Domine dirige nos. The origin is early 17th century from the Latin dominat, which means ruled or governed. Think about the word dominate, dominatrix, which was used earlier. I can't tell you what context that was in, but it was an interesting conversation. From the verb dominare, from dominus, lord or master. Dirige. See dirge. We all know, I think dirge is a word that we're quite familiar with. Yeah. A noun, Roman Catholic Church, the office of the dead. Well, I didn't know that until the other day. A song of mourning, sung at a funeral. Okay, we're familiar with that one. Or in commemoration of the dead, a lament. Can also mean a funeral feast or a wake. Dirigere means direct. Dirigisme, the policy of state direction and control in economic and social matters. Nos is us. So literally it means Lord or Master, directors. Now who's the us that we're referring to? Not us. Huh? Lord, Master, directors. Is it applying to those who are working in the City of London? Or is it a mind control program that's being put out there into the people's heads? Even if they don't actually recognise it, they can see that there is some kind of oppression going on there. So to go back, logic is reasoning. What we're doing here is just working it out. We've got the information coming in. We've taken in the symbol. We've taken in we've touched on the lettering, on the wording, and when we're putting that information together, we're using the grammar that's come in, the who, what, where, to work out what's going on. So we reach the answer of the question: how? How is it working? The funner part is rhetoric, where we're dealing with the why of the matter. Rhetoric is a noun. The art of effective or persuasive speaking or writing, especially the use of figures of speech and their compositional techniques. It's not just one thing I wish to make clear, if I haven't made clear already, is when we're talking about grammar, we're talking about all the information, all the data that's coming in, visual clues, emblems, anything that you're seeing as well as hearing. It's not just words. A lot of people, I used to think that grammar was really about concerned directly with language, but then I did an English degree, so maybe that's what I was supposed to believe. But it's more than that. And rhetoric is defined as the art of effective or persuasive speaking or writing, especially the use of figures of speech and other compositional techniques. A language designed to have a persuasive or impressive effect. I used to teach media studies. I used to stress to the kids that we're not just dealing with literacy in a language sense. You have to deal with visual literacy as well. There are visual literacy skills that you can pick up on its audience, but it is often regarded as lacking in sincerity or meaningful content. All we have taken from the opposition is empty rhetoric. Empty rhetoric. We've all heard that. We recognise it when we hear it. You often hear judges coming out with it in court. They're full of it. And often, it appears. So when people get a reminder from a bogus council about a bill, they're using mind control techniques in there with the use of the red lettering, the way you're addressed, the use of threats in the sentencing. It's all part of their rhetoric. So that's what you're dealing with. Now, my attitude is, right, these fuckers are not actually that good with rhetoric, so once I got into this, I realised that I was pretty able to rebut all their presumptions, because you're just dealing with their empty rhetoric. I had a classic letter come through the other day I was storing some of my goods and chattels round at a friend's house, which was under threat of repossession by some LPA mortgage bandits. And they came in and they've seized the house for the second time, and basically I sent them a notice of lien interest, saying that all the property in there belonged to me, and as far as I was concerned, if there was any damage to it, I would hold them personally liable. I didn't hear from them, so I phoned them up, and they didn't want to speak to me, but eventually they put someone on the phone to me in the afternoon from the Cardiff office, and I got him to agree verbally over the phone. I've written it all down, I've got his details, that he's personally liable for all my stuff in that house, and that he understands it's a trust arrangement, and he's the trustee. And then last night I get a letter through which was written by the solicitors who were representing the LPA receivers, Walker Morris in Leeds, who some people will have heard of. They're a particularly sharkish-like collection of debt collectors, let's call them what they are, saying that they'd seen the letter that it was not a letter, it was a notice of lien interest. They'd seen the letter and it had no basis in English law, and therefore they're going to ignore it, and there's yada yada yada. We suggest you take you take independent legal advice. It's empty rhetoric. You know what I mean? It's a waste of paper and a waste of my time to be receiving dross like that. However, that's what the legal profession is largely full of. Right, but as I was saying before, the etymology of the word is very interesting. So often we've got to look into, we can use words and we can use them wrongly if we don't really understand what the original meaning is. So we use the word government, right? When you know what government actually means, the etymology of the term, well, you might start to question whether actually we need any kind of government at all. If it's there to mind control people, is that a good thing? I don't know. Well, no, I do know, and it isn't. Right. The origin is Middle English from the Old French rhetoric, via Latin from Greek rhetorique, techne, art of rhetoric from rhetor. There's a few little umlauts on there, like on these marks on the top of the letters. I never really learned what. I think. Does anyone know? Have we got any linguists in the room tonight?
It's an accent, isn't it?
It is an accent, but I don't know how it works. I know it's supposed to like that over it.
I think it's supposed to be pronounced.
How does it work on the E? Does it lengthen the E?
Like a W of we. It's a wet of it.
Is it? Release Roger. Release Roger.
It flattens it to an F.
Oh, this. Can you read that at the back? I'm going to read it anyway. Fallacies and arguments. Okay, so one of the things that we're going to move on to now is we're going to move on to this next part, which is argument. Now, I'll come on to that, but fallacies. Well, I don't need to explain it. It's here. In order to understand what a fallacy is, one must understand what an argument is. Very briefly, an argument consists of one or more premises and one conclusion. A premise is a statement, a sentence that is either true or false, that is offered in support of the claim being made, which is the conclusion, which is also a sentence that is either true or false. There are two main types of arguments, deductive and inductive. A deductive argument is an argument such that the premises provide, or appear to provide, complete support for the conclusion. An inductive argument is an argument such that the premises provide or appear to provide some degree of support, but less than complete support for the conclusion. If the premises actually provide the required degree of support for the conclusion, then the argument is a good one. A good deductive argument is known as a valid argument and is such that if all its premises are true, then its conclusion must be true. If all the argument is valid and actually has all true premises, then it is known as a sound argument. If it is invalid or has one or more false premises, it will be unsound. A good deductive argument is known as a strong or cogent inductive argument. It is such that if the premises are true, the conclusion is. And I'll let you fill that bit in. Now, so for instance, I said one example of this, right? I said that the meaning, if you look into the meaning of what a license is, right? You only need a license. It's the state giving you permission to do something that would otherwise be unlawful. So quite why you would need a TV license, beyond my understanding. You don't even need a driving license as far as I'm concerned. If you've passed your test and you've got your test certificate, that was part of my turbo talk. That's for another time. But you don't need a license of any description. I mean, it's nonsense because no one can give you permission to go and break the law. 007's got a license to kill. It's bullshit. That license isn't worth the paper it's written on because no one can give him the permission to go and take another one's life. That's it. Cause no harm to anyone else. Simple. So argument, original Middle English, in the sense, process of reasoning, via, Old French, from the Latin argumentum, from argure, make clear, prove, or accuse. Okay, so when people talk about arguments, people getting into arguments, they're actually misusing the word, because an argument is where you're supposed to be making something clear. People regard it too much as a little bit of a confrontation, but really, it doesn't necessarily have to be a confrontation. I mean, I'm not going to go into that, but you know, couples talking about having arguments between themselves. Are they really having arguments? Because if one of them's not being very clear about what they're saying, or the thinking's not working, it's not working, then they're not really able. They're not arguing, are they? Because they're not thinking. They're not making their point clearly, and it's probably backed on a fundamental premise. My mother is great at this. And I said to her the other week, she was saying something. She just basically jumps to conclusions. Like my uncle Vernon came out to see my dad, who's ill at the moment, and he came into the room, and I said he wants to know what I'm doing, as you'll see earlier, with this claim against the solicitors. And my mum's saying, "Oh, Michael, don't talk about that. Your Uncle Vernon isn't interested." She's arguing. She's giving it that right. She's putting her rhetoric before her grammar and her logic. And I say this to her, because I know for a fact that Vernon is very interested in what I'm saying. So her whole premise is it's a false premise.
Sort your Trivium out, Mum.
I say to her, you've got to get off those statins. Statins are preventing people from being able to think straight. Yeah. Is anyone here on statins?
I've got them, but I don't use them. Got to buy some anyway.
Get off them. If you're on them, get off them as soon as you can. It's depriving your brain of the essential oils that it needs, effectively. Right. So we're moving on to the next part, which is logical fallacies, and I'm going to be looking at a few in particular. The straw man we'll look at. We'll look at the slippery slope, I think. The ad hominem. You may have heard of some of these. That's an interesting one. Special pleading, right, is actually a logical fallacy. Yet the courts, you can enter special pleas at court. So, yes, come in, Mr. Easman, come in, yes, sit there, let's hear your special plea. Let's hear your logical fallacy. Someone's taking the piss. Where was I? Loaded question, bandwagon, that's an interesting one. Begging the question. I'm going to look at begging the question, appeal to authority. And I don't know what that is, Rob, do you? No true Scotsman. And the thing is, I can't actually read that. I've only got that there because I like the picture. You see, we've got Plato. You see, it's all connecting in very nicely. There is a method to this, you know. That's one of the things I want you to test out. Am I applying the trivium to this talk tonight? Has it got structure? Am I explaining the where, the how, and the why of the matter? And not to mention the who, the which. Burden of proof and appeal to emotion. My mum's pretty good at that, but she's very good at sticking that one in. It's all on her emotions, you know. She's on statins, God bless her. And she's having a tough time with my dad. But she won't get to see this film, so I'm not going to. I can speak. There's certain things that people I won't speak freely about, but I have no problem about speaking freely of my mother. Because I'm only applying the trivium, it's great that she's able to provide me with these opportunities to test it out. Practical, you know, practical application. That's what it's about, isn't it? Right. So, logical fallacies are defects that weaken arguments. By learning to look for them, you see, this is about empowerment, and people are using logical fallacies all the time against us. And no more so than when you're actually dealing with the so-called authorities or government. You know, it's no coincidence. You know, I was watching this. This was, I don't know if anyone saw it. I don't watch much TV, but there was a Gary Lineker, right? He was on something about who do you think you are? Has anyone seen that? Now it's kind of shallow because it only goes back. I've said don't go that far back. He went back 200 years, and he went to this school that one of his ancestors had been. It was like a Great Expectations story. His little ancestor, I think it was his great-great-granddad on his mother's side, had got a benefactor who'd sent him. He was a poor kid, and he'd seen promising the young whippersnapper, and they'd sent him to this school, the name of which escapes me. But Gary Lineker went down there to visit the school, and it was originally called. It was a hospital school. It's called the hospital because hospital actually means a place of education. A doctor is a teacher. If you look at the real meanings of the words. And he went to this place, right, and they moved it out of London. It's effectively a fee-paying school, okay? And I looked at the people, and as he's walking through the schoolyard, does anyone see this? You've got these kids, right, walking around in these black gowns that come all the way down to their calf muscles. Their calf muscles, you notice the calves because they're wearing gold socks, like silk socks. They've got black shoes with big buckles on. And then around the necks, they've got these huge white, really broad scarves. And you're thinking, what on earth is going on there? What kind of mind program is going on? What are they being prepared for? Because you look at that image, you think, right, priest, judge, vampire.
They're all the same, aren't they?
You can't get a cigarette paper between any of those three. So yeah, it's actually it's a tool, really. It's a weapon, because if people are using fallacies against you, it's really helpful if you can identify. The kids pick this up very quickly, apparently. You know, they just cut through it. You teach, if you've got kids and you start teaching them about logical fallacies, you're going to be in for an interesting time, because they'll soon start pointing yours out. But the beauty of that is it'll empower them to see when the teacher's bullshitting them, or when someone else in the class is using a fallacy against them. They just point it out. They can have it out. And once you understand, once you see, like anything, once you see through these things, these methods of control, they tend to dissolve. It's like that moment, the famous moment in The Wizard of Oz. The curtain comes back. It's the little guy behind the screen. Oh, what were we all so scared about? You know, it's like that. Right. You can strengthen your ability. This is a quote from a. By the way, all this stuff is available, and if people get in touch with me, I'll send you PDFs of these files. This is from a PDF file I've got, which lists something like 49 logical fallacies. Where was I? First, fallacious arguments are very, very common and can be quite persuasive, at least to the casual reader or listener. You can find dozens of examples of fallacious reasoning in newspapers, advertisements, and other sources. Second, it's sometimes hard to evaluate whether an argument is fallacious. An argument might be very weak, somewhat strong, or very strong. An argument that has several stages or parts might have some strong sections and some weak ones. The goal of this handout, then, is not to teach you how to label arguments as fallacious or fallacy-free, but to help you look critically at your own arguments and move them away from the weak and towards the strong end of the continuum. It's quite useful to be able to spot whether someone's using a fallacy against you, but also it's a two-way process in the sense that it really should be actually sharpening up your powers of rhetoric and your ability to stop using fallacies yourself. You know, because, and this is key, because it's like, well, you know, if you're involved with solicitors, or you're taking on any of the government agencies, you've got to be able to put forward your case as strongly as you possibly can. Even in a situation where you're dealing with a copper, you need to be able to be very clear about how to express yourself, which again is rhetoric. Right, the first fallacy we're going to look at is the ad hominem, which is the attack on the man. Translated from Latin to English, ad hominem means against the man or against the person. An ad hominem is a general category of fallacies in which a claim or argument is rejected on the basis of some irrelevant fact about the author or the person presenting the claim or argument. Typically, this fallacy involves two steps. First, an attack against the character of person making the claim, her circumstances or her actions is made, or the character, circumstances or actions of the person reporting the claim. Second, this attack is taken to be evidence against the claim or argument the person in question is making or presenting. This type of argument has the following form. Person A makes claim X. Person B makes an attack on person A. And you have to fill in the rest yourself. What is it? I've got a slight...
Actually, Scotsman argument again.
Yeah. I'll give you an example of it, right? You know, people use this all the time. Well, David Icke believes in lizards. David Icke has said that the government is oppressing you. Person B says David Icke believes in lizards, therefore you can't believe what David Icke's saying. Or you're criticising him for...
We bring out an argument to persuade the truth, don't we?
That's right, yeah. It's a deflection. It's also, sometimes, there's another aspect, there's another one of these called the straw man argument, where you attack the person who's making the claim. Another one is the appeal to authority. This is one I've probably used it myself as a teacher once or twice, but I've also been on the receiving end of it, notably in one or two court hearings. Also known as fallacious appeal to authority, misuse of authority, irrelevant authority, questionable authority, inappropriate authority. Ad verecundium description. Appeal to authority is a fallacy with the following form. Person A's claim to be an authority on subject S. Person B makes claim C about subject S, therefore C is true. The fallacy is committed when the person in question is not a legitimate authority on the subject. More formally, if person A is not qualified to make reliable claims in subject, then the argument will be fallacious. Appeal to common practice. Right, and again, I'm going to be giving you a practical example of this later, but I'm sure you can all think of them anyway. You know, if I'm saying, if the court says to you, well, this is just how we do it, and you're saying, well, that's forged. Oh, it's just how we do it. Just because something is how we do it or common practice does not mean to say it has any morality. There's any morality to it, or it could be logical or reasonable or anything at all. You know, the banks pretend to lend people money and then screw them for interest. Well, that's common practice, just how it is. Just how it is. And that's the appeal, you see, to common practice, the idea that you can't get around it. It's a fallacy because the mere fact that people do it does not make it correct, moral, justified, or reasonable. Appeal to emotion. I gave you an example earlier. My mother appeals to emotion. Oh, we can't do that, Michael. Think what would happen. Oh, we're not doing that. I don't feel, no, it upset me too much. An appeal to emotion is a fallacy with the following structure. 1, favourable emotions are associated with X, therefore X is true. Well, he's such a nice man. He seems such a nice man. I can't believe he went to war with and bombed. It can't be true that he did that to the people of Iraq. He seemed like such a nice man. Some people say, well, you know, that it's clear. It's in your face. It's a fallacy. It's an appeal to emotion. More formally, this sort of reasoning involves the substitution of various means of producing strong emotions in place of evidence for a claim. If the favourable emotions associated with X influence the person to accept X as true because they feel good about X, then he has fallen prey to the fallacy. Advertising uses it all the time. You know, the Lynx adverts. You put this spray on and these women are just going to get one whiff of you. They're going to be in there. Huh? But fallacies are the stuff of advertising, there's no doubt about it, and most TV, in fact. But often it's the appeal to emotion. And would it be controversial for me to suggest that a lot of advertising is more directly aimed at women who I think are a little bit more susceptible to this, because women are, God bless them, are a lot more open, and they're more open to these feel-good feelings. You know, they know what makes them feel good, and if you're an advertiser, and you're trying to sell them something, you just appeal to their emotion. Oh yeah, oh that'd be lovely. Oh, let's do that. No, we're not having Malibu. You know, alcohol uses it, doesn't it? The association of alcohol with good times. You know? I'm not saying you can't have a good time on alcohol, but I'm saying it's using, you know, it's deliberately manipulating people. Let's move on to the appeal to fear. Right, I've heard this. This is, you know, appeal to fear, scare tactics. Y is presented, a claim that is intended to produce fear. Therefore, claim X is true, a claim that is generally, but need not be, related to Y in some manner. The line of reasoning is fallacious because creating fear in people does not constitute evidence for a claim. I heard the judge say, I was helping this guy, this young man he was in court for possession of 46 beautiful herbal plants. And he went in, he did the free man thing, he refused to get in, they forced him into the dock. He says, I'm not answering to that name, that's illegal fiction. Really stood his ground. It was a really ballsy performance. The judge said to him, I kind of like this, I'm on a bit of a judge kicky. He said to him, if you don't get yourself legal representation, young man, you're going to be in deep, deep water. And of course, it's just a fallacy. It's just using fear to try and get him to persuade him.
What did he do?
He stood his ground all the way through.
He
He got the best result possible in front of a jury. He showed them the Rick Simpson video. He convinced them that he was growing the herb to make cannabis oil. Convinced the jury. But basically, we were there as his attorneys. The judge went out, was in there. We got chucked out early on. He was in the dock with all the paperwork. He had to spread it out on the floor. One of the points was you're not allowed. He had to defend himself from the dock, and every day, well, it's a 4-day hearing, every day he went in, he says, I'm not that legal fiction, I'm only going in under duress. I'm not that, and he went in there and he basically defended himself, and the judge, in the end, he gave him a suspended, slap on the wrist, it was a suspended sentence, and 9 months probation, something like that. Did he get a guilty though? He was found guilty, yeah. But that's what you get. It's all a fix. In fact, I'm going to have to change my tactics in line with my police claim. Here's another one: circular reasoning. Begging the question is also known as begging the question. Okay, begging the question. Reasoning in a circle, petitio principii. Begging the question is a fallacy in which the premises include the claim that the conclusion is true, or directly or indirectly assume that the conclusion is true. This sort of reasoning typically has the following form. 1. Premises in which the truth of the conclusion is claimed or the truth of the conclusion is assumed, either directly or indirectly. Claim C, the conclusion is true. This sort of reasoning is fallacious because simply assuming that the conclusion is true directly or indirectly in the premises does not constitute evidence for that conclusion. I'll explain it in circular reasoning. Right, Mark Stevens does this very well in America. If you watched any of his work, No State Project on nostateproject.com, I think you can find it. He basically asks the prosecution to provide the evidence that a crime has taken place. Or this is one that he's trying out. Have you got any evidence that I am liable for council tax? Have you heard his phone calls? You've done a similar one to that. Where's your evidence that this applies to me? What do they often say? Well, no, they say, oh, it's in the Act. It's in the Act. It's paragraph 7 of the Act. And they just go round and round. But where is the evidence that that Act applies to me? Oh, it's in the Act. It's in the Act. They've got nothing. They just go round and round. Circumstantial ad hominem is a fallacy in which one attempts to attack a claim by asserting that the person making the claim is simply acting out of self-interest. In some cases, this fallacy involves substituting an attack on a person's circumstances, such as the person's religion, political affiliation, ethnic background, etc. The fallacy has the following forms. 1. Person A makes claim X. 2. Person B asserts that A makes claim X because it is in A's interest to make claim X. Therefore, claim X is false. Now, this is actually this was what someone said to me. I had a bit of a dispute with someone when I had the temerity to question some information that a guy in London was putting out about the Vatican and about the common law. And he just basically started slagging. See, this is one of the things about social media. It's very easy to start, get behind your keyboard, you start firing it off. Things that you wouldn't actually say to each other face to face. And in the middle of the conversation, I thought, I said to him, look, you wouldn't say that face to me face. It's either shut up or save it for when we're face to face. And I phoned him up, and he refused to take the call. And then he sent me a message on Skype, and his last line was something like, I'm cutting you off, my friends, and also your critical thinking didn't save you home, did it? Which I just thought was a very nice example of a logical fallacy. He was basically implying that I was subject to an unlawful eviction. I had my house stolen off me by the fucking the bandits known as the banksters. They used 21 coppers to break in, and the rest of it. And his line was, "Well, critical thinking didn't save your home, did it?" And I thought that was that's great, man. You just give me a nice bit of material there. You know, what am I doing communicating with this guy? Didn't save your home, did it? What would have saved it was perhaps the only thing I could perhaps have done was brick the bloody door up and have a tank parked outside. False dilemma. This is quite often. If you don't. Where you're presented with two options, and there's only, in any situation, you've got more than one choice. You've usually got more than two choices. So if anyone's presenting you with a situation where it's an either-or situation, either we do this or we do that, it's often it's what's known as a false dilemma. And the pattern is either claim is true or claim Y is true when X and Y could both be false. Claim Y is false, therefore claim X is true. there's a simple example. If you don't vote for Labour, then the Tories will get in. Well, it might be true, but the point is, when you actually zoom out a bit and you see that the two heads on the same beast, it's a false dilemma. So it is important to stand. This is it really. Remember, it's balancing that the power of the individual with the strength of the community. It's a fine balancing act, because if you go a little bit too far into one way, you become a little bit too isolated. If you go the other way, you become a little bit too much part of the collective. Yeah, and collectivization is what the system is trying to impose on us now. That's what all the programming is about. But never underestimate the power of the individual. And if someone's actually trying to put, on you, if someone's trying to force a way of thinking on you that is emphasizing the collective, you should be very, very suspicious of them. That's not to say, however, that we shouldn't, as it says there, stand together. We have to stand together when the time is right. And we're getting near that now. I think the stuff about the courts, the experiences we're having, I said it to Michael Doherty the other week, I think this is ending in, we're going to have to sort it out ourselves and establish our own common law courts or grand juries. That's where it's heading. Yeah. I see, if the evidence is stacking up now, what are we doing fucking about with these goons? I notified these solicitors who I'm in dispute with now that there's an investigation taking place. Now, most people say, if I tell you there's an investigation into you right now, they will immediately think, oh, the police are investigating me, or MI5 are investigating me. And of course, that's what they want you to believe, because that's what that's what all these cop shows are about. Getting you to believe that the police are actually competent, that they are capable, of, in fact, taking it to the levels of understanding and depth that maybe Sherlock Holmes could do. But Sherlock Holmes is a fictional character. I don't think Sherlock Holmes for 1 minute exists in any of the police forces up and down these lands. So is that the end of the first half? All right, yeah. Hold on a minute. I'm wrapping it up for the first half. Okay, so that's like I say. Gnostic media. If you want to take this further and look into the logical fallacies and stuff, it's great fun actually. If you've got kids, I think most kids will really dig this, because it's just empowering them so much. They'll probably give you a hard time if you're prone to making fallacious statements. But then again, if you're prone to making fallacious statements, you need to be given a hard time. Oh yeah.
There's no better than the kids, I tell you.
Now, here's a little plug. If you want to contact me, you can contact me through the website, which is thinkfree.org.uk. Think Free is the antidote to government. Remember, government means mind control. The antidote to that is to think free for yourself as an individual. But that's not saying as a standalone island on your own, but as someone who shares the information and the knowledge.
Collective of individuals.
So yeah, we've got the website thinkfree.org. I'm on there as Michael of Elmet there, and that concludes the first half. The second half we will be taking the Trivium and applying it to the mortgage fraud.